So we began this journey. It took 3 days. I was brain dead for 3 days. And while I was brain dead for 3 days, I was journeying with my guide, Drake, and he was showing me the cosmos. He was teaching me things. I got to touch down in what we would call heaven. I got to actually see what it is, how it is. And I'm telling you, there's more energy in a single blade of grass there than there is in our entire solar system here. It is so much energy there. And it's an energy that we can't even comprehend. We're also a much larger being. When we're in our energetic form or our soul form, we're much taller and bigger than what we show up here in the physical realm. And I could feel that just everything was just so much more vast in this space. And as I was learning and growing and getting to this amazing place, Drake, he put his arms around me and looked me in the eye and said, "Vinny, this is going to be very hard, but it's going to be worth it."
My guest today is Vinny Tolman, who was taking a muscle recovery substance that, by the way, is no longer legal. And he had an overdose on this substance that caused him to have one of the longest documented near death experiences. He was documented to be completely dead for 47 plus minutes. He had an incredible experience on the other side, and he influenced the people that were actually bringing him back to life. So, Vinny, welcome. I'm so excited to talk to you today.
I'm excited to be here. It's awesome to be with you, Laurie.
Oh, thank you. Well, why don't you go ahead and tell us how in the world you got into taking this muscle recovery supplement in the first place?
Well, at the time, this was back in 2003. It was extremely popular. It was so popular, it was sold out everywhere. All the American stores were sold out. So we found an online store in Thailand that it offered the same product. So we figured, hey, let's order it. We ordered it. The big mistake we made is we neither one of us could read the Thai script on the bottle. And it said very clearly, this is a concentrated formula. Human dose is like 1 drop. But in the American formulas, the human dose was a regular dose was 1 bottle cap. And so, 1 drop to 1 bottle cap, we were getting quite a bit more than what we were supposed to. We thought it was just like the American stuff, our mistake, but we should have diluted it with 9 or 10 more bottles of water just to dilute it to be like the American stuff, but we didn't. So we took this bottle cap right away. Me and my best friend, we both took it. We knew something was different and wrong. We knew something was wrong. We had learned from experience from some of our friends who were also taking these products that if you get a little too much, you just go get something to eat and then you feel better. You're fine. So we thought, let's go get something to eat. We went down to the local Dairy Queen. It was only a few blocks away from his house. And we barely made it into the parking lot. I had to put the car in park for him. He was driving because he was so delirious already with this toxicity of what was going on inside our bodies. I, slammed the car into park. I stumbled out of the car. I went into the Dairy Queen, and right there was a bathroom. So I went directly into the men's bathroom, and it's a single bathroom. So I locked the door. And after me, but he went in and collapsed on a booth, like the first booth to the left as you walk in that Dairy Queen. He collapsed on that booth and started vomiting all over. Well, the manager came out and saw that. He called 911 and they hauled him away in an ambulance, like very fast. But meanwhile, I was in the bathroom. I had fallen and collapsed on the floor and I started to vomit as well, but I was on my back. So I aspirated. I ended up aspirating. And I was there for quite a while before they found the body. And I say the body because I did die right there. Within minutes of my buddy passing out, I had passed there. And about 45 minutes to an hour later, a patron in the restaurant, he convinced the manager to open the bathroom because it had been locked for so long. And so the manager opened that bathroom to see a dead guy on the floor. And not only was it a dead guy, but he was cold to the touch already. So it was quite fast. The body cooled down substantially. There was some recorded temperatures when the medics got there. The medics did pronounce the body DOA, or dead on arrival. They did try preliminary chest compressions and a couple of other things, but nothing worked. They knew that this body was dead. They bagged it. They put it in the back of the ambulance. But this medical crew was a 3-man crew, and there was one guy that was a rookie. It was his first week out in the field. So here he was watching all of this, and he really wanted to make a difference for doing this job. He wanted to do, going above and beyond, as sometimes rookies do. And he was watching all of this, and he felt like, no, we should have tried harder. We should have done more for this guy. So while he was in the back of the ambulance watching the body, now that, recorded time from the time that I was bagged in the body bag and to the time where the heart was started back up, it was 47 minutes. So documented on paper, there's 47 minutes of documented no heart rate, cold temperature to the body. Even some muscles were showing signs of rigor mortis or stiffness. So all of that's going on for the body. He sees it in the bag. And while they're driving towards the medical examiner's office, he gets this premonition. He gets this feeling to go ahead and try with this one. So he breaks protocol. He opens the body bag and he feels around for a pulse. He doesn't feel a pulse, but he feels something. And that was enough for him to go ahead and try to resuscitate the body. So he got some oxygen fed into the lungs, and he hooked up a defib. A defib is like a shocking device that shocks the heart to bring it back to life. And he was able to shock the heart and get the heart to come back. So at that point, 47 minutes dead. Now all of a sudden, this body is coming back alive. This all happened within a block of a hospital, a trauma center. So they were able to, quickly get this body to the trauma center right after the heart was started. To me, it's not just a miracle of the fact that I was able to cross over and come back, but it was a miracle that this rookie broke protocol. It was a miracle that he did that at his own demise. He got in a lot of trouble for breaking protocol and followed that prompting and got the heart to start again. And that's when I went from just viewing all of this. I was watching everything, including watching my buddy leave in an ambulance from above. I was watching everything from above. It felt almost like entertainment to me, almost like a movie. It felt exterior to me. It didn't feel like I was involved. I felt like I was viewing it. And it's so weird to say that, but I wasn't in the body. So I was up above and just observing everything from above. Well, as this is all happening, I'm watching them transfer the body into the hospital, and it looks like hell to me. What that body is going through, it's going through seizures. There's all sorts of foam and vomit coming out of its mouth. And it got to a point where they had to straddle the body and strap it down so that they could work on it and inject some things in there. And as they're doing all of this, I could feel this warmth coming over me. And it was just after I felt this fear. First, I felt this fear of like, you're such an idiot. How could you not know you're dead? And that was very real. Like, how could I not know I was dead? And so I did have this big wave of fear come over me. And I saw all the bad things I ever did in my life. And, but, when people talk about a life review, the way they portray it as if it's like you sit down, you slowly watch all these events. It was an instant, and bam, I could see every bad thing I ever did. I could also see it from the perspective of someone who I did it to. And I was just feeling this dark energy of, wow, why were you here to do all of these things when all of a sudden I started to see all the good that I'd ever done. And as I felt the good that I was doing, that I had done, I felt this warmth come over me from behind me. And I turned around to see where this warmth was coming from. And I saw this man all dressed in white, just an amazing a beautiful man, just beautiful suit on with this kind of robe over it. And he had long white hair, long white beard. He had these eyes that could just pierce you and like look inside your soul and almost like hug your soul. And as I'm looking at him, my first thought was, this must be God. This has to be God. And he smiled without saying a word. He said back to me, he said, "No, son, I'm not God." And, I grew up Christian and it didn't make sense, but I thought, well, is there some way that you're Jesus then? I thought like that's the only other thing I knew at the time. And he said, "No, son, I'm not Jesus. My name is Drake, and I'm here to be your guide. I'm here to help you go wherever you want to go." And I got excited about that. I've been always passionate about the universe, and I would just thought, wow, anywhere in the universe I can go right now. And I still kept feeling this constant flow of love coming from him. And I asked him, I said, "Well, what about this love that's coming from you? I want to go where that's coming from. To me, that would be the supreme place to go." And he said, "Well, that's your home. That's where you came from originally. And I'd love to take you back there." So I said, "Let's do it." So we began this journey. It took a long journey. It took 3 days. I was brain dead for 3 days. And while I was brain dead for 3 days, I was journeying with my guide, Drake, and he was showing me the cosmos. He was teaching me things. I got to touch down in what we would call heaven. I got to actually see what it is, how it is. And I'm telling you, there's more energy in a single blade of grass there than there is in our entire solar system here. It is so much energy there. And it's an energy that we can't even comprehend. We're also a much larger being. When we're in our energetic form or our soul form, we're much taller and bigger than what we show up here in the physical realm. And I could feel that just everything was just so much more vast in this space. And as I was learning and growing and getting to this amazing place, Drake, he put his arms around me and said, and looked me in the eye and said, "Vinny, this is going to be very hard, but it's going to be worth it." And when he did that, we came together in this hug. And this hug, it felt like a pulsar. It felt like this expansion of my soul and his soul. And I felt this tremendous force like come around us and come away from us as we hugged. And then I started to hear a prayer being given to my body in the hospital. And this prayer was being heard. I could hear it as if it was being said in my ear. And it was my own brother. He was saying a prayer over my body and he was blessing it to be made whole. He was blessing my soul to come back to my body. And when he got done with that prayer, I could feel all the forces in the universe like grabbing me and pulling me back to my body, even though I didn't want to go necessarily. There had to be a part of me that allowed it to happen, but I didn't feel that I wanted to go back. I wanted to stay where Drake was. I wanted to stay in our home. But there was some type of higher path for me, and that higher path led me back. So my brother gave me that prayer at about 10 p.m. I woke up at 1:11 in the morning that evening. And when I woke up, I pulled everything off me. I pulled all the sensors and the wires and the catheters I had breathing apparatuses. I was on full life support. So I pulled everything off and I just stood there naked in my room. And there was all these machines beeping. I even unplugged those machines. I literally yanked them out of the wall. I couldn't have any sound around me. I couldn't have anything touching me. Even the sound of these fluorescent lights that were in that room, they were obnoxious to my energy already. And I just felt so constrained. And one of the reasons why I felt that is because the soul, again, is so much larger than our body. To come back into the body, I felt instantly claustrophobic. And still to this day, Once in a while, I get a little rush of claustrophobia when I'm in big groups, or I get caught up in tiny spaces. But as I'm kind of standing there, just taking some deep breaths, I did recognize, oh, you're naked. And, we kind of all know we're not supposed to be naked in public. So I was rifling through the cupboards in my hospital room, and I found some gowns, and I just wrapped like two or three of them around my midsection, and I just left. I just walked out of my room, and I knew I could see an elevator down at the end of one hallway. So I was walking towards that elevator. I made it all the way to the elevator and hit the down. I could tell I was on a higher floor. And I hit that down key, and then I heard a scream. Then I heard some talking. Then I heard another scream as these two nurses came out of the room and saw me. And, the first thought they had was that somebody had snatched this body that was in a coma, but only to come to find out that he was down at the elevator trying to escape. So they did scream. I felt bad. I didn't want them to get in trouble. I could feel that they would get in trouble if I escaped or left. So I came back. I met with every department to clear me, to allow me to check myself out of the hospital. I had to answer innumerable amount of questions, as well as take a lot of tests, a whole battery of tests. They wanted to keep me for observation for at least one more day, possibly 2 more days, just to make sure all the systems were online inside my body. But I felt fine, and I was ready to go. So I went through all their tests. I passed them. I was ready to go home, and I left that hospital at 7:30 in the morning that same morning after I woke up at 1:11. So it was very life changing. I felt that I was a very different person after this experience. And people who knew me before this experience and they know me now, they'll even attest, yes, he's very different than he was. Before this experience, I was very career minded, very income minded. I thought my future belonged in TV and film. I'd worked in it already for a few years, and uh, I put all of that aside, and I just started focusing on people, on the humans around us, the souls around us, and even the animals around us, and the trees around us, the plants around us. And now that's where my focus has been since. Is I find my success with people and living and connecting to the other living beings, whether they're human or animal or plant. I connect to life, and that's where I find our creator. That's where I find my heaven. Is I find it through all of these people, places, and organisms. Yeah, that's my existence. And I had a really neat confirmation when this all first happened. I thought I was crazy. I could now see dead people. It was so vivid. I would see them everywhere, and I felt crazy. And I went and sought professional help on it. And as I did, I saw a particular person who was passed in this office with the doctor. And I shared a message that she wanted me to share. Um, and that doctor, he later communicated to me, hey, that message is something that he had ever known. No one in his whole life had ever known that thing. And that was a very specific confirmation to him that what I was experiencing was real, was not a delusion. It wasn't a hallucination. And that I needed to try to figure out a different path with dealing with this new version of me. And so I did. I really went and found myself leaning into and learning about meditation and learning how to connect to my inner self, my higher self. And that's what led me to meeting my fiance, who became my wife now of almost 21 years. When I met her, she was my windows to heaven. I got to see and glimpse my home, my heaven in her eyes when I met her. And she influenced me to go to family reunions and support my family in any way that I could. And at one of these reunions, only a few months after, about 6 months after I came back, I was at this reunion and watching this historical presentation put on by the local town about the history of this little town in Wyoming, some of the first clergy, some of the first founders, the first mayor, all of this. And out of nowhere comes this picture of Drake, my guide. But as soon as it came up, I froze. I started to cry. I was confounded because it said his name was Charles. It didn't say it was Drake. So I was confused, but I recognized the last name. The last name was Kazare, and I knew my grandmother was a Kazare before she got married. So I went to my grandmother right away. We went straight there, and I said, Grandma, tell me about this Charles Kazare. Who is he? I think I recognize him. I know I recognize him. And her exact response was, Oh, you mean great grandpa Drake? He's kind of famous in our family. And that was when I just lost it. I lost it. I remember I even sat down when she said that to me because now it wasn't this possible delusion. It wasn't, it was someone who I didn't know. I'd never known, never even heard his name in my whole life. And not just that, I knew him by his friend name, not his professional name, not the name he's recorded in historical documents as, but the name that only his closest friends and family called him and his own grandkids called him. And what a gift that was to me to recognize that this was a real thing, because I don't care if this happens to you, you're going to think you're crazy. You will. If you have a good mind on you, you're going to think that somehow you're crazy by this happening, and you're going to try to figure it out. And I'm so blessed. I feel so grateful that God gave me those little confirmations so that I could know for sure that this was something that really happened to me, and that I needed to move forward in my life implementing what I learned from my experience. And that's what I've been doing ever since. And I'm human. I'm not the best at it, but I do try every single day to emulate what I learned in my experience. I try to better people's lives. I try to better my own life and better those around me by implementing what I learned from that experience. And that's where I exist. That's my daily existence now.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Okay. That's an incredible story. There's so many pieces to this. So I want to go back to when you were first in heaven and you made a comment and you said you got to glimpse at what heaven looked like, and you talked about the energy from a blade of grass being more powerful than
Mhm.
all of the energy in our solar system. So first of all, will you explain from your perspective on what you remember in the words, the limited words that we have? What did that heaven look like to you?
So it's really amazing. Heaven in itself is a place far away, yet it's right here. It's far away in frequency or dimension, but yet it's here as well, as if all of space is here. And so Drake was taking me from this point of this high density or heavy density space to a much lighter density, higher energy space. And that's what heaven is. Heaven is less dense, but much higher energy. And
When you say
and
energy,
yeah,
do you mean frequency specifically,
yes, frequency and energy.
vibrationally?
Yep, vibrationally. Yeah, and in our human life here on Earth, one of the highest frequencies that we can achieve with our existence is authenticity. And that was one of the
Hmm.
first things I had to learn was authenticity is paramount for us. Just to even be
Okay,
able to kind of crack open the door to get to heaven, we have to start by being authentic.
that's interesting. So when you started to speak about that, I thought for sure you were going to say love because that is one of the things that people
Yeah,
talk about.
that's what I thought too.
You are the first person I have ever heard say that authenticity is that gateway. Will you explain in all of your 20 plus years that you've had to unpack this, what exactly you mean by that?
So to me, what it means is you have to figure out who you really are without all the insecurities, with all the insecurities, with any of the things you try to hide from the world. You need to figure out who you really are and allow that person to come out to play. allow that aspect of your personality to come out to play. Because here's what's weird. People go out in the world with a false persona around them. They put on the look and the energy of something else other than they are. And when they do that, the world falls in love with this false persona of them and not the real them. And they end up having almost this animosity towards who they have to be to the outside world because the world loves that version of them. And the only way to grow, the only way for us to truly grow is to be authentic. And it's really funny in this life, the most authentic people are the kids that are under 5 or the big kids over 85. You know, you get the older folks when they're over 85, they don't care. They don't care what people think anymore. They are as authentic as you're going to get. And before they turn 5, for some reason, they're still so authentic. So we have to try to peel away all these layers of falseness in front of us and allow ourselves to be the same person if we're hanging out with a friend or we're going to see mom or we're going with family or going to church or religion. We need to be that same person that we are everywhere. And when we can be that authentic version of ourselves, we now have a foundation to build who we are. But when we're constantly putting up these facades and these falsenesses, we're not actually creating a foundation of growth. We are falsifying. And it's a matter of time before that facade is penetrated or it fades away or we're not able to maintain it. And a lot of our energy can be spent in actually loving others when we're not trying to be something that we're not. And when we love others, that love reflects off of them and it comes to us. And that's authentic value. That's the value that we seek when we're trying to put up a persona or a falseness. But in an authentic way, we can grow and build more relationships, real relationships, than we ever could in the traditional way of falseness or fakeness around us. Because if we can't authentically love ourselves, we can never authentically love anyone else. We can't. So it starts
Beautiful.
there.
Beautiful.
Authenticity, authentically love yourself so you can love others. Yeah.
So you come back and you understand that you've got to change who you are because you must have seen through the facade of where you were not living authentically. So, for the people that are watching, can you give us one or two tips on things that you did to be a little bit more authentic in your persona of who you are in the world?
Well, the biggest thing for me is I felt like you could never tell the truth, the total truth to people. I felt
Okay.
like you had to hold back the truth. You could trickle out the truth to people, but never come with whole truths. But what I found is you can come with whole truths, even hard truths. You can come with hard truths, but sprinkle it with love, with unconditional love. And it's always a safe space. It's always a good place to bring truth out, always. And if there's issue found, it's not with the truth, it's with the avoidance of the truth. The truth itself is something that is so important for us. You know, the world we see on our phones, that's not real. It's not real. It's someone else's reality, but even that is not real. You know, out here in Las Vegas where I live, they have this fake private jet. It's grounded, like it can't fly, and it's booked out constantly all year long as a movie prop, as a prop to shoot film or to shoot Instagram videos or to shoot all sorts of videos to make you look like you're a high roller. And it's so sad that there's all these people trying to put themselves out as this successful being. But guess what? Success is not having a huge bankroll. Success is having some tremendous relationships, having a lot of people who really love and care about you because you really love and care about them. That is actual success. Because when we leave this life, we don't get to take our planes, we don't get to take our income, we don't even get to take our watches or our jewelry. What we get to take is our relationships. So those are the most important gem or jewel that you can gain in this life. So focus on the relationships. That's far more important than the income. But of course, having some income behind it makes it easier to focus on the relationship. So it's not such a bad thing either, but it's not
Right.
the priority. It's
Right.
definitely not the priority. Yeah.
Okay, that's super helpful. All right, so go back to the heaven and you were going to describe what it actually looked like. So you've described the vibration and how it is located in a time space
Mm-hmm.
construct. So
So
what
to
did it
me,
appear to be?
it does exist in an actual distant space that we could possibly point a telescope at and see, but it's also right here. Like we could get there by going to a high version of ourselves, a love version of ourselves, like the highest ultimate frequency of ourselves, and will instantly just show up in heaven, in that heavenly space. It's where, as we perfect that frequency or that energy of who we are, we're able to start oscillating or existing there. And that's why some people feel like earth is heaven, because you can feel heaven on earth when you're in such a grand frequency of love. And that's inviting heaven in and inviting you into heaven. But this, it is a very real place, very real. Angels, very real. There's innumerable amounts of angels, and they can be in all these different places at the same time because time and space is part of the virtual reality that allows us to believe we're having a physical existence here on earth, but in reality that existence is actually there. The eternal existence is actually the real existence. And this heavenly space, it's so hard to describe in words, but I'll tell you, just the grass alone, there's millions of shades of green just in the grass alone. Each blade of grass has its own consciousness, but yet together you could feel the personality of the creator like coming through in the collective of all that grass together, just pouring unconditional love over you. And the grass itself, light comes from it. So in that heavenly space, there is no external sun. Each piece of life there has light coming from it. So instead of being an external source of light, it's an internal source of light for all existence there, including us. Like when we go, we vibrate and oscillate with light. And the flowers have light coming from them, the trees have light, even the water had light coming from it. My favorite was the water, but to even classify it as only my favorite, all of it was my favorite. But the water, ooh, the water.
Oh, I
Um,
want to hear about this water. Okay. So
so
did
I
it
was
look to you
experiencing,
like water that you
it
would see
did
on Earth?
look like a little stream. There was this little stream. I could see off in the distance, there was this big reservoir or lake, not a reservoir, it looked natural, but with a mountain off in the distance of that. I could see the trees over here. I could see the flowers. I got to see the flowers up close as if I was like a bee, like on the flower. I got to see the grass and feel the grass, the consciousness of the grass come into me and come over me and kind of plug into each other. Felt like it was charging me up. And then the water approached me. It came up and out of the little stream that was near me, and it came over to my foot. And I could feel it asking me, do you want us to come up onto you? And I was like, yeah, I was excited. I'm like, yeah, well, I want all of this, whatever, everything that this is, I want it all. And so the water just slowly started coming up from my toes onto my feet and onto my ankle. I'm going up my leg, up my abdomen, up onto my head and covering both arms. And it was almost like it was turning into, it wasn't a gel, but it was almost like gel. It was like just holding around me all over where I had my energetic body. But what I didn't realize is I had a very abusive upbringing, had some pretty bad abuse done to me and some of my siblings. And that broke me. It kind of cracked my soul, some of that abuse. And this water was going in and just filling in all those little gaps that were formed by that abuse. And for the first time in my existence, since probably I was 3 or 4 years old when the abuse started, all of a sudden I could feel whole again. And I felt just the peace just wash over me. And I could feel the water like smiling and so happy that it was able to do this for me. And then as soon as it had done its work, it just started to slowly recede off of me. But one of the first things I noticed is I'm like, but I'm not wet. And it's because it was the energy of water, not the density of water. So it was very different there than it is here. So it didn't leave any remnant of that water other than healing. And later I had an idea. I said, well, maybe that's what baptism is supposed to be. Is it supposed to be like a healing that we get there? But it was just such a beautiful experience to be there. And there was a building, huge building. I could tell it was a school. People could enter and exit rooms without doors. They would walk up to a room and want to enter to learn what was going on in that room, but they had to match the love energy that was going on inside. And if they couldn't, they had to move to another room. But if they could, an opening would just like liquefy in that wall. They would walk through and it would just seal itself back up. But it was marble, it wasn't liquid. The whole building was like one big, huge piece of marble, but it was living. It's like a living piece of marble. And it had light and consciousness itself. Just the building had consciousness, but everything there was tremendous. Changed my life. Just going through that experience completely changed my life and changed my belief. Now I yearn to go back there. I do, but I am going to not shortchange myself and not waste too many opportunities here. I'm going to try to amplify my opportunities to build those relationships here.
Wow. Okay, so let's go back to the water for a second because you said something and it made me want to ask this question. You said that as the water receded, it wasn't the density of water, it was the energy of water, and you looked at yourself. So that means you saw your body, your energetic
Yes. Yeah. I
body. Will
had,
you describe what your energetic body looked like to you?
so it looked the same as I did in my 20s. And this happened when I was in my 20s, but it looked perfect. Like when I was a kid, I got hit by a truck. The truck ran a stop sign. I got hit by it and it broke my femur and it ripped out the inside of my leg. So they had to rebuild the inside of my leg from other tissue and muscle within my body. And so I have this calf that looks kind of odd. And I joke it's my butt calf because it's my butt muscle inside there.
That's pretty
And
funny.
and when I looked down, I noticed that I had two perfect legs, like perfect. And I looked and I didn't see any scars on my hands. I didn't even see like wear lines or aging or dehydration. None of those signs and symptoms were there. Everything felt smooth. And here's what's really weird is in the energetic body, your skin glistens and it sparkles like sand in the sunlight. And depending on your light energy, you could sparkle like a sun, like you could glow like a sun, or you could just be like about the lowest form you can get is that sparkling sand on the beach. So it's really cool. It's a glimpse of what your energetic body is. But I also felt later when I had to come back to my body, I felt like I was a whale being squished into a tuna can. I felt like the energetic body must be vastly larger than our physical bodies here because I did feel like I was being crammed down into the physical form when I came back. That was really hard. I still struggle with that here and there with
I'm
claustrophobia.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I've heard a lot of people talk about that and that expansion, and I've experienced that myself. So when you see your energetic body and you can see this energy that glistens from it, you also are with Drake and you
Hmm.
can see his. Can you
Yeah.
explain the glow that would have been coming from his body and what that appeared to you as?
So I want you to remember, me growing up, I grew up in the Mountain West. And during the winter, we would go visit my grandmother and you'd open the door to grandmother's house and you would just get this onslaught of warmth and cooking food and love and sometimes music. And it's like just that onslaught of walking into grandma's home. That's what it was, but it was constant. just constantly coming at you like that, just constant. And that was the energy coming off of Drake. And of course, he was much more than just glistening like sand. He did have that aspect to him, but he was almost luminescent himself. He was. And that's why when I first saw him, I thought he was God. And he kind of thought that was funny that I thought he was God, but he's like, no, I'm not God. I'm just Drake. I'm here. I'm your guide. But it was absolutely amazing to see him and behold him before I came back to my body. Right before he had hugged me, and in that hug, just supreme power. And that's when I realized when we come together on this earth in unconditional love for each other, in service of each other, in true service of each other, without selfish desire, we can change the universe. We can create many pulsars of energy, of light in this universe by doing that. And, I feel like, in later, I learned about Kundalini and I learned about the sacred infinite cycles of energy. And I feel that's what we're doing when we do that. We're creating that balance to that energy. And it's something that all of us have access to when we're in this physical form.
Wow. All right. So on the other side, you mentioned the school and the
Mm-hmm.
living marble and the entities, the spirits that you saw were going in and out, and it had to be a measurement of the vibration. And then you've also talked about this glow that we have and how it could be as plain as the shimmering of the sand, but it could also be as expansive as the
As like the
brightness of
sun.
the sun.
Yeah.
Okay, so did that have something to do, the brightness of that light have something to do with the energy being a higher level?
Yes, absolutely. So, just to even be there, you had to be at this much higher version of light that we don't get access to here. I would equate it to like almost like our sun here. That's where the energetic body goes to begin its expansion into the heavenly space. But I could tell every being that was in that space, including the trees, the flowers, everything had its own light and it had its own level of light. Now, all of them were grand. All of them were brighter than me. I was like the dimmest light there because I was brand new and it would take some time there for it. But what's great though is after the water came off of me, I was a brighter light than I was when I first got there myself. Each student in the school, each person trying to study whatever they're trying to study, each one of them had different levels of light. And you could tell when they found something they were excited about that they were sharing with someone, they would like, they would glow. They would really glow. Like more light would come off of them as they're sharing something that they're passionate about. And it reminds me of when we see a new expectant mother, we sometimes feel like they have kind of a glow, and they do. They energetically have a brighter light coming off of them. Even in this physical form, they glow. It's something that it's almost extra sensory, but I feel that in the future, even our technology will be able to pick up that level of energy that each one of us has, even here. Yeah.
So I know that these things do not equate to a good, better, best because that does not exist on the other side. But was there a certain refinement that somebody who would be bright as the sun have, that somebody who would have that dimmer light like you did coming in there or being new to that situation, would that have something to do with a refinement, I guess, or a learning or a knowledge, or how would you describe what that
To
would, how
me,
that would change?
it's an embodiment of passion, comfort, forgiveness, and love, which all of those are different versions of love. It's just an embodiment of that love energy. The more we're able to embody it now, the brightest beings in that space were angels. They looked like suns themselves, as bright as they were. And in fact, every time I saw one, I'd have to like phase myself a little bit so that I could see beyond the brightness of what's going on there. But angels by far were the brightest. of anything. And yes, they're very real. And they essentially are just direct extensions of the creator there. They're kind of like workers at the functionality of this heaven space. And they work here too. They just work through other people mostly here, not yeah, in their angelic form, but they work through other people typically here. But that would be the brightest that I could see was the angels by far. But there you could see that as I was getting cleaned and purified through that process of the water and embracing the grass, getting charged up with the grass, I was brighter after I was charged with the grass. Even seeing and experiencing the flowers, I came away brighter. So there was a distinct like graduation happening just even to me in my 3 days that I was spending there. I was able to see some graduation going for me, but everybody did have, you could tell. And it's not that anyone, there's not insecurity. So no one was like looking over and saying, "Ooh, I wish I had their light." That never happened. If they saw someone that was bright light, they would just love that person or that being was existing and oscillating at that high energy level. And here's what's great in loving and respecting someone else being that, you yourself would get raised by that too. So that love worked both ways there in so many different ways.
I love that because when you say that, it then emulates that what we do to others, we do to ourselves.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I always joke around. I was shown the print. Drake called it the principle of the pointed finger. Whatever we point outwards. So if we're saying, look at that bad guy or bad girl, right? We're pointing 3 times as much energy back at ourselves. And we're also blaming the creator by one essence too. That's why our thumbs go up. But here's what's great. We can also say, wow, look how amazing that lady is. Look how amazing that man is. Look how amazing that kid is. And that's giving that same positive energy to our creator and 3 times the energy back to us. So it's very important for us to work in the positive here. And, life in itself is going to give you negative, but focusing on it and spreading it and sharing it only gets more of it. And the more positive we can be, the more positive we can speak out of our mouth, the more positive we can think, the more positive we will actually obtain and achieve in this life, not just here on earth, but of course in the eternities. Yeah. That's one of the lessons why we're here, is to learn how to harness that love, to share it, to utilize it, to amplify it by sharing it to others. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it really um, touches back on other near-death experiencers that I've heard say these very similar things. There's definitely seems to be this overriding message that's coming back from these. So you also mentioned the learning. And so I'm going to ask you, what did you bring back universal knowledge that you didn't already have? Because I know that this completely changed everything about your life and how people even perceived how you were. But what
Mm-hmm.
type of learning knowledge were you able to bring back that you can share with us?
Well, number one, people and living beings are more important than any job or income. That was the big thing. That was a big aha moment for me. The other thing was with prejudice. I felt I had no prejudice. And, but yet I was told, I was asked, Drake asked me, if you're not prejudiced, how do you feel about prejudiced people? And I went off. I was like, I hate prejudiced people. They're so bad. They're so closed-minded. And he showed me by me not liking prejudiced people, I myself was becoming prejudiced and that I had to remove all prejudice. And when I can do that, I can see who people really are and I can love them for who they really are. And when you can love someone for who they really are, not for who they portray themselves to be, but for who they really are, you strengthen that authentic self in them and you. And to me, that's the biggest takeaway is authentic love comes by authentically loving others around you, despite the differences in religion, lifestyle, race, whatever, any differential factor. It doesn't matter. What matters is that soul inside, because that soul inside is a sliver of God. I feel it to the deepest part of my being that all of us have a sliver of heaven in us, every single one of us. And it's our opportunity to feed and to water that heaven energy in everyone around you, and you will see people change in amazing ways. Yeah.
So, on the piggy bank of the word change, one of the aspects of near death experiences that I feel causes the most change in people is something that you did experience, which is a life review. And I
Mm-hmm.
love the way that you describe this because the life review, everything happening in a moment, but you not just experiencing that moment from your perspective, but experiencing it from the other's perspective. So I know this is vulnerable. So I'm okay with you not answering this question if you don't want to, because I'm going to ask you on both flip sides of this. But you saw things and you said you saw things that were what you would label as bad
Mm-hmm.
that happened with other people, and you felt what they would have experienced from you in those situations. So, can you give a couple of examples, or maybe even just one example of something that you experienced in your life review as bad and what you felt or how you felt from the other person where you were not aware of this before this experience?
Well, me and my brother, we were 2 years apart growing up, and we were always fighting, like fist fighting sometimes. And what I didn't realize is both of us were just dealing with the abuse that we both had gotten as kids. And we were channeling that abuse, that hurt soul, and pointing it at each other. And that was a big one. Times where I thought my brother was fine. He acted like that didn't hurt him. I could feel like to the deepest part of my soul, like what was going on when he brushed stuff off and act like it didn't hurt. And then I realized that many times in my life I said something ignorant that I didn't know someone was suffering near me, and I would say something and didn't realize that they themselves were struggling with the very thing I was putting down or judging. And so I don't walk on eggshells with the way I live, but I make sure that I emulate and I try to expand my love energy to those around me so that I'm so in tune. I'm not perfect at it, but I can be so in tune with that love energy. I know when someone's struggling with something and to either not bring it up or to bring it up in a loving way. And to let them know that everybody struggles with things. Nobody is perfect. That's part of the process of being here is embracing the imperfection and starting to love it and then allowing that imperfection to get smaller and smaller as we get better at allowing ourselves love. So, that my brother would be the big one. That was a really big one. I didn't realize because he was a tough kid. I was a tough kid. If he had a life review, he probably would have seen the same with me that I was hurting, like aching inside sometimes with what he said or did. But that one was a big one. And since then, I can say I have a closer relationship with him since the experience than I did before, for sure.
Wow. Okay, that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing the vulnerability of that. So, on the flip side, you also saw some of the good. And I would imagine that there were probably things that you saw that you weren't even aware
Yeah,
that,
a ton.
that impacted somebody. So, can you share a couple of those?
Well, I had gone and worked as a missionary, and where I worked as a missionary, I was teaching English and I was teaching sanitation and teaching kind of life skills to the locals in Cambodia, Vietnam, and Thailand. And when that was happening, I didn't realize that something as simple as being kind to my English students and being just a friendly, smiling face when they would leave that English class to go back to like this really hard life. They felt like heaven for them was English class. And I had no idea. I remember I'd have a bad day here and there, and my students would be like, "What? He doesn't have bad days," So it was really neat for me to see that sometimes a simple smile, a handshake, a joke with light-mindedness or lightheartedness, I could really make a big difference for those kids. And then, later after my experience, I actually got to reconnect with a couple of those kids that were in the class, and some were extremely successful adults with, huge estates and holdings, but they started out as these homeless kids learning English. And it was awesome. It was so awesome to see even the aftermark of that, to get the connection with them later. Yeah.
That's incredible. So, when knowing all of this and coming back with this and knowing the ripple effect, did you immediately begin conducting your life differently with
No.
that knowledge in the back?
I
No, it
I
wasn't the
wish
magic wand.
I wish it was that easy, but my thing was right when I first came back, I studied the most dangerous jobs so that I could go get one of those jobs. I went and looked up the jobs that you can't get life insurance while you're doing these jobs. I was going to try to do one of these jobs so I could hurry and just have a convenient accident and go back. That's where I was. But what stopped me from that was I went to a friend's house. She was supposed to be home. She wasn't home, but I knocked on her door, and her best friend, opened the door. And we had this moment, me and this girl. To me, she looked like a young girl. Like, she didn't look like an adult. She was an adult, but she didn't look like an adult. And when I looked at her, and there was just this silence and this like awe between us. And I didn't think I was going to date her or anything, but I just wanted to spend more time with her and talk to her. And she wanted that with me. And before we even had been on one date, we both knew we were going to get married. We didn't know how or when, but we knew we were going to get married. And then by the time we'd gone on a date, we started making plans and setting dates and everything. So that's who my wife is. And we've been married for 21 years. It's like, God put us together. And that's what really helped amplify my trying to emulate what I learned from my experience. Before that, I was just trying to survive and get back. That's what I wanted more than anything. And once I met her, I knew that there was a heaven here that I could start pursuing. And that's what I
Love
did.
that. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
When you first described her, one of the things you said that I was going to come back to, so you've given me the perfect segue to do it. You said that you saw heaven in her eyes. Tell me
I
what you
did.
mean by that, because now you've come back with these additional gifts. You're seeing people who are not living. You're
Yep.
hearing information that you're sharing with people and getting confirmations that these are real. So you're also seeing things in others that maybe we, as without your experience, don't glimpse. So tell me what you meant by you saw heaven in her eyes, because I'm going to guess she's not the only one you saw that in.
Now, what's neat is when we're kids here, we still have one leg in heaven. We do until we're about 6 or 7 years old. That's why the young kids have so much optimism and positive energy around them. You know, generally speaking, it's not every kid, but generally speaking, most children have so much light around them. And to me, after I came back from my experience, kids still glowed. I could still see like a glow coming off of children. And Andrea, who's my wife, when I first saw her, she glowed. And that's when I was like, wait, she's a woman, but yet she's glowing like a child. And to me, that was it. That was it. I knew here was a piece of heaven right here in a human form. And come to find out later, a lot of her friends called her Angel because she always was working with kids and just loved kids and passionate about kids, even though she's a young adult. She didn't have any kids, but she worked around kids constantly, and still to this day she does. She works with autistic children and is very gifted with them. And so, I got to see and glimmer that light, and to me, that was worth investing in. And that's where I built my life around, was her.
That's beautiful. All right, let's talk about some of these other gifts that you did not have before. So, how long after your near death experience, because it's been more than 20 years, did you continue to see spirits while you were in your back in your body in your human form?
So I continued to see spirits until about 2008. I was finally able to, I learned from someone who had been dealing with this her whole life that she could put on a special hat and it like toned it down. So that's where it started. I would actually put on this watch. And when I would put on that watch, I felt like that was my blocking that energy. And I learned to block it that way. Then I started a business, and the business itself was blocking that energy itself. So I didn't have to wear the watch anymore. So life in itself started to take over, and I was seeing less and less. Now I have to go deep within the same way that any average person would today. If they want to tap into their intuition or tap into spirit, it's deep within. It's the universe within, or the you inverse. That's what the universe is. And if you can go inside, that's where you have access to all of that. And that's what I actually do. I help people. I'm a coach. That's what I do for a living. I help people tap into their intuition, activate it, amplify it, and start connecting to it, start communicating with it. It's not so easy as do this, now you're speaking to your intuition. It's do this, see how you've changed, now we do this. And it's like this constant process where you get better and better. And no matter how good you are, you're always going to think, well, I want to get better at that communication. But at a certain point, you finally just rest after years of that. And you're like, you know what? I'm good where I'm at. I can help others. I can help myself where I'm at. And that's what my goal is, to help people get to that place where they're comfortable tapping into that intuition, because there's a near future for us where we're going to have to choose to tap within or to be enslaved with our technology
Ooh,
and
let's
have our,
elaborate on that a little bit more because this is super
well,
fascinating. Because I know some of this has to do with the technology where it's gone with AI, that type of thing. But
mhm,
it's also how much these phones take us out of being our authentic selves, but
mhm,
also play with our vibration because it's just messing things up from a frequency standpoint. But then there's also the misperception and maybe the attention that's directed so much there that you're not directing it into these relationships. So I'm sure it's
yeah. And
multifaceted.
and it's the illusion of relationships without actual relationships.
Oh, hold on. Say that again.
So technology is the illusion of relationships without actual relationships.
Okay, explain.
So an
I'm getting
an
this, but explain what you mean by that.
so an actual relationship is I can use my technology to call or text or message a friend and say, "Hey, can you come over and help me with whatever?" And a real relationship would be that person coming over and assisting me with whatever I need. That is a relationship. It's give and take, back and forth. They need, you give, you need, they give. And that's what relationship is. And if you get a bunch of relationships, then you have community, real community. And I don't mean your community is not your lifestyle. Anyone who says that, they're lying to you. Your community is not your religion. Your community is not your sexual orientation or what sex you were born as or what you affiliate or emulate. Your community is a gathering of relationships. And we're coming into a new world where there is no community, no actual community for a lot of the world. None. Because who can they call and not have to pay someone to come help them? That is where real relationships are, is the give and take of helping each other out, covering for each other and helping each other. That is relationships. And that doesn't happen because of technology. That happens by going and being and meeting and connecting with people, not their profiles, with people. I'm very blessed to go for about 2 to 3 months a year, every year, to a special ranch called Timepiece Ranch. And we build community there. And it's just amazing. It's better than family reunions. It's better than anything that I've ever experienced because these people are excited to be near each other, to build each other, to lift each other up, to help each other, to help create a better version of oneself that can go back home to their homes when they're done. And what an experience. It's what we're all supposed to be eventually doing. But here's where the enslavement happens. Think about this. When you have a question during your day, try to get it answered without using technology.
What, we have to go back to the library?
Yeah. So, not the library. Guess what? What did our ancestors do when they had a problem and they didn't have libraries? They didn't have phones.
They would go to the elders.
They would go to the elders or of the community, or they would go within. And within, there's answers to all of the universe. Because remember, the universe is just you inversed. That's where the universe is. That's where all the answers lie, is in here, not necessarily in the phone. It is easier to get it from the phone. The phone is like informational porn. It's just quick, boom, I got the message, I can move on. But what if this message is so important for us to land and to receive in us? And that's where we can connect to the divine. Connect to the divine, and you can get answers that AI and Google and all these other things cannot give you. They can't give you answers for what the divine can. Like, perfect example. You're thinking of doing this business or this business. Well, one business is potentially your destiny, but doesn't make sense on paper. The other business is all the sense in the world on paper. Well, if you ask Google or you ask even a quote unquote friend which one you should do, they're always going to say whichever one brings you greater finances. Okay. But if you dove within, I'm giving you a real world example of one of my clients. We helped her dive within to figure out which business was the right one. And come to supposed to do both. She was supposed to do the one business as like a part-time job, and then the other business as a kind of a side gig to follow her destiny until that could grow so large that she could put away or sell the original business. But that's not an answer that she could have gotten from Google or from her phone. That was an answer she had to dive within, tap into her own higher self, tap into her own connection to the creator. And that's where a very clear answer came. And it was vivid for both of us. So when it's coming through both of us, we know that's God, that's the universe speaking to us saying, oh, here's the very clear answer. And that's what we're losing by seeking all of our answers right here. But this is just a tool. It's like a hammer. You could build a house with it, or you could crush a skull with it. It's just a tool. It's not the tool that's good or bad. It's how we use it is what's good or bad. And so we've got to learn to not use this tool so much. Learn to use the original tool, the tool that our ancestors were good at, the tool that built religions across the world. But we can have direct access to the universe, to our creator, by just asking, by going within.
Well, I really appreciate that. And I'm so glad that you brought all that up, because about an hour ago, I was sitting in my driveway after I dropped off my car for some service with my dad. And I was having the exact conversation about what your client is going through with this YouTube channel and my corporate job.
There you go.
And the confirmation, of course, is that, one can be a stepping stone for the other while you're going through it. And so it's kind of ironic that we're having this conversation about an hour after mine, and my whole life is filled with signs. So thank you. Maybe other people listening just got the same kind of a confirmation from
Well,
some of the things you've said.
I have hundreds of these experiences to pull from, and I pulled from that one distinctly for that reason. Yeah.
So yeah, I think we're vibing on the same frequency right now.
That's awesome.
So, Vinny, people that are listening today will probably have questions. They'll want to reach out to you. They'll want to work with you. So, how can people connect with you and work with you?
Well, I do everything through my nonprofit. It's livinggodslight.com. From there, we do have a link over to Amazon to buy if they want to, or to schedule a session. what we're doing at Living God's Light is we are building a community, a non-denominational community of spiritually activated individuals, people that they know there's a higher essence to who we really are, no matter what terms they put to that. And that's what we're doing there is we're building that community. We're building some workbooks and building some things to do that people can do in your average home anywhere in the world to help amplify that divinity, that activation of divinity within. Yeah. At
Beautiful.
livinggodslight.com. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Vinny, this has been such an enlightening and inspiring conversation. I always feel blessed to be able to have these conversations. They're the best thing that happens in my day. But not only are you sharing your experience, but you shared what you've learned from it. So I want to thank you for the work that you're doing to help contribute to and wake up the collective consciousness to remember the power that exists within.
Well, I appreciate that. And I thank you for being a venue to do this. There's so many options out there for entertainment, and to have one that can uplift you, can amplify your spirituality or amplify your soul or your well-being, that's such a beautiful thing. And you know, when you look at the numbers of people that are unhappy with their lives right now, it's insane the high amount of people at every income level that are very unhappy with their lives. And there's a reason, because we keep doing what we've done in the past, but we're expecting a different outcome. And we can't do that anymore. It's time to recreate media, and that's what you're doing. You're a pioneer in recreating the new media, the media of uplifting, the media of truth, the media uninfluenced by big organization or business, and to just really bring the tendrils of inspiration and truth to the people. It hasn't been done in our modern era, period. So thank you for doing and being what you are.
Yeah. Thank you. I needed that today. You're going to make me cry. Thank you so much. And thank you everybody for watching.
Thanks, Larry.
Next up, check out this playlist of other NDE interviews. Please like and subscribe. It really helps this channel to grow so I can bring you more content. Thank you for watching. I'm so glad you're here.